CEDDMACK, it's a beautiful thing.
Musictechworks. So as we know, the October 2nd, the Akai MPC Live III has been released. There was a lot of leaks and I have been paying attention to it, but I didn't really comment on it too much. Just based on history, kind of figured it was coming. How I got my hands on it, I will talk about that shortly here. And let's just talk about some reasons. So I have a lot of clients, students that I teach and I deal with, and other producers that I work with and everything. And, you know, they value my opinion. So they'll ask me, you know, should I get the MPC Live III? Okay. So what I would ask them is exactly what do you have now? If I don't know, you know, a lot of times I just know what they have already. Like, exactly what do you have now, and are you using it? And what are you going from? So what are you coming from? So I have a guy that we pretty cool. He hadn't done music in a while, and he wanted to jump into getting the MPC. So his first thing was, you know what, I'm gonna get a Live II. So the whole time we're talking, he's like, hey, you know anybody got a Live II for sale? In the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, I do. I got one for sale, because, you know, eventually I'm really holding out for the the next version of the MPC X, the flagship, even though I know the Live III is coming. So I'm like, you know what, I don't really use it that much because I'm not traveling as much. And I mainly use the MPC XE or the Key 37. The Key 37 is my travel joint because it got the keys all in one. Might be the best MPC. I think that 61 might be the best MPC, but I wish they would make a version that had the full size pads. But he asked me, you know, what you think about that? I'm like, yeah, the Live II is fire. You know, we hadn't even mentioned the Live III or talked about it at all or said anything about it. You know, and he's like, yeah, you know anybody got one? I said, yeah, I got one. At that time, I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and sell it because I'm not using it. You know, I can put that into, you know, grabbing another synth. I've been getting a lot of analog synths and some of the newer digital synths, and even the older ones. It just does something to the sound, the analog, and the tracking directly in through the interface. So it just sounds bigger and better to me than some of the, you know, a lot of the VSTs. So I said, yeah, I sell mine. I give you mine, you know, a little bit, you know, they going for $700-800 online or whatever, because all the hype about the MPC Live III. Okay, so we're gonna meet up and he gonna go ahead and get it, and then later on he hits me the day before, which I saw it coming. He said, hey, do you know about the 3? I said, yeah, I know about the 3. And that's when he said he was on the fence about it. And long story short, he decided to get the 3. But I was just telling him, since he's coming from FL Studio and he hadn't produced in a while, but he wants to get back into it and, you know, just get back into his craft because, you know, it's a love and it's a passion for him. So he wanted to get back into music production, and he really wanted to work hands-on with the MPC. And I always encouraged him 4 or 5 years ago, hey, you need to jump on this MPC. You know, it's a different experience. FL Studio is fire, you know. But if you want some of that hands-on magic and, you know, just try something different a little bit, you know, maybe check out the MPC. So he finally decides, and he did hit me up about it. And I said, yeah, the Live II, I got one, but long story short, he decided to, you know what, I'm not going to get the Live II. So what I did, I posted it up on Reverb and Facebook Marketplace. I will share the link right here if anybody want to find one that's basically brand new, and I may have used it a total of about maybe 20 hours, 24 hours maybe. But anyway, so this just made me think, just without everybody asking me about the MPC Live III. And instead of telling you why you should get it first, let me tell you why you should not get it. So these are my 5 reasons why you should not get the MPC Live III. All right, so let's just start here. Number 1, personal finances, skill level, and the seriousness of it. So this is not a cheap device. For your level of production and as far as being serious as a beat maker and producer, okay? So if you're playing around and doing it for fun, you know, you may want to consider a used MPC 1 or 1 Plus. So you can find those for $300 to $500. You know, a lot of the pluses. I found the MPC 1 Pluses about $400, $450, but anywhere between $300 and $500 between the MPC 1 and then the MPC 1 Plus. It has the extra gigs of RAM. You know, it comes in the red color. In the yeah, that's basically what it has. It has the 4 gigs of RAM in the red color. And you know, you can get one of those models to learn the MPC workflow without spending almost $2,000 for something that you may not like in the long run. So especially coming from making beats on the computer, you know. So it's a different workflow, and although you're able to develop your own workflow based on how you like to work. And again, $1,800 is a lot of money to spend on a hobby. All right. So what are your goals as a producer? I'd say start cheaper and work your way up. For $1,800, you can get a nice computer, software, MIDI controller, headphones, and an interface. Okay, so reason number one, not to buy the MPC Live III. You know, your personal finances. We all trying to get it together here, you know, and are you a super beginner? Like, are you just from scratch, you know? And are you serious about it? Are you just trying to have fun? So that's reason number one why I would recommend, you know, to not buy the Live 3 at this point. $1,800, okay? Taxes are higher in some states, you know, maybe a little bit more than that. All right, so let's go ahead and go to reason number two. This is something that you need to understand about any gear. All right, everything rolled out, you know, everybody's hyped about it. You've been making beats for a while and you just want to get into that, you know, get into your flow thing. So understand this, and this is with any gear. So reason number two that you should not buy the MPC Live 3. The MPC Live 3 will not make you a great producer. Okay, so no gear alone will. Producers in the real world outside of YouTube use a combination of software and gear to produce music. Also, the level of talent and skill set are important. Okay, so where are you at talent wise? Where's your skill sets? So right now, apparently I'm gonna say temporarily, because I'm pretty sure Akai is coming up with the flagship, like another X type MPC. But where's your talent level at? So the reality of it is that most aspiring producers are not hungry enough. Moreover, they are not willing to put in the work to develop the skills needed to go to the next level, developing those skills that's needed to compete in this already saturated field of creativity. So everybody's a producer, everybody makes beats, everybody does this, everybody does that. So my question is, why would you spend $1,800 on a new piece of gear and you're not even using what you have now? So being able to do a lot with a little is a skill itself. You know, back in the day when I was coming up and learning, just watching other producers and seeing what they was working with, they did not have all the things that we have now, all the tools, all the workflow enhancements, you know. And then now you're spending $1,800 on a piece with more bells and whistles, but you didn't use the features fully in your DAW or in the MPC that you have, not even in your Live 2. So you have a Live 2 now, or MPC 1 or Plus, and you haven't even used all the features in that. This thing right here comes with extra functionality. Okay, but you want to spend $1,800 on the MPC Live 3, but you did not utilize all your tools that's in the MPC Live 2. So the question is, did you export all of the features in your current setup before deciding to spend $1,800 on a new piece that you're probably not going to use to its fullest? Okay, ask yourself that question. All right. So number 3, think about this. Now, I've been dealing with MPCs since probably around 90. Actually, the first time I ever made a beat on the MPC was in 1995, and it was on the MPC, or was it 97? It was one of those years, but it was the MPC 2000. Okay, the first year it came out, I went to a studio, and over there in Huntsville, Alabama, he had one. And yeah, that was my first time using one. I was, kind of, probably the first time I made a beat in the studio was on the ASR 10. I didn't even know what the ASR 10 back then. Steve was his name. He engineered the session. I just played the parts. And now that I think about it, it was an ASR 10. So later on, when I went to another studio, he had the MPC 2000, and I made it was an R&B track and everything. So think about this. Before spending $1,800, think about exploring one of the many vintage MPCs to understand the classic workflow and the big deal about the sound of these machines. So I'm specifically talking about the MPC 2000 or the MPC 2000 XL. So these machines define a generation and continue to contribute to so many hit records today. All right, so working on one of these MPCs would definitely help you appreciate the new workflow enhancements of the new generation of MPCs. And this may also influence you to achieve the sound quality that has been perceived and it has been lost due to digital audio and lower quality audio converters. All right, so we're gonna get on the converters thing here in a minute. Now we'll have to bring this up. All right, so now even when I'm using a new generation MPC, this is for me. Even when I'm using one of those MPCs, I'm trying to make it sound like a vintage MPC. All right, and this most of the time involves other gear and techniques from an audio engineering perspective. Okay, so I often combine the old and new to achieve audio satisfaction. And you can use an old MPC as a sound module and still control every device in the studio with one of the new gens. I would MIDI up my 60 or my 2000 XL, and I would just control it with the MPC X. All right, but really I want that sound. So you can find a 2000 or a 2000 XL. I usually get them around $300, to be honest with you. You might need a pass sensor, screen might be going out, or the floppy disk don't work, or it might just need some minor repairs. But between $300 and $400, you can find them, and one that's usually ready to go will be anywhere from, you can get lucky at about $600 up to $1,000 if they got everything updated. And you just turn it on and it's ready to go. Load your sounds and you're ready to go. So between $700 to $1,000. One of the things I do, I'm going to show you a couple of pictures. I am big on just wanting people to use these machines so they can really see what it's like and hear what they're like. We're so used to the fast, super workflow. We don't really think about the sound too much, or I'm gonna say a lot of producers don't really think about the sound so much, especially the younger producers. They're so used to doing everything on the computer, which is cool, but sound is very important. How well it sounds, how well it translates, especially in a live setting, and when it's broadcasting, being played on the radio, or just when you distribute it, period. These days we're depending on these AI mastering programs and all that. I still take a lot of my work to a mastering studio and running through the analog gear, but I also use the computer as well. But what I'm using is emulating the analog the best it can. But I am building a mastering analog rig right now, and I'll be sharing that in the future. All right, so just encourage you. Somebody got an old MPC, just go by there, holler at them and say, hey, let me check it out. And you hear the difference, and you see the basic workflow of them, where the new generation, where they get it all, where it all comes from, what inspired those new machines. Okay, so before spending $1,800 on that, you know, get you about $300, $400, $500 to get you an old MPC. Play with them, learn them, experience them. So when you do get your MPC, you know what that new MPC is what it's supposed to sound like. You know, but that brings us to the subject of converters. Here we go. All right. So I think we need to understand what converters are. So let's just go from here, and without revealing too much, I'll reveal it later at the end of this. Comparing the MPC, the Live III and the Live II, the converters aren't exactly the same as they are in both machines, but the sound itself pretty much sound the same. You know, it may be different chips, but I can't really hear like an improvement or a degradation in the sound, you know. So the new gen MPCs are basically computers with audio interfaces built in. So they don't have the same analog components as the vintage MPCs, obviously. So these converters can actually be considered lo-fi compared to the audio converters of today. The bit depth makes a difference, the sample rates, they were lower and it was not as clear. Just to keep this simple, we just say clear. You know, you have a muddy sound or a clear sound. Those machines were not as clear. You know, they sounded good and crispy, but like an MPC 62, a 12-bit machine, is not as clear as a machine that's samples at 44 kilohertz to 48 kilohertz, 24-bit or anything like that. They're not going to be as clear. But what this did do, the sound was thicker and warmer. In vintage machines, you know, they were thicker and warmer in vintage machines as early as 20 years ago. So computers took over with the advent of DAWs, digital audio workstations. So basically, when we was able to make beats on computers, they kind of took over the sound quality versus using the hardware machine. So, and with computers, it's like almost anybody can make beats now because the computers were not as expensive as a drum machine or, you know, hardware equipment. Oh, I can get this piece of software and I can make a beat. Now I'm a producer. Okay. So now the sound of the computer or its attached interface became the modern sound of music. Now something you can do is get you can get the old CD or album, or you can get an old CD or somebody's music on cassette. Also get it on CD, and then you can compare the two. So the CD would be much clearer and more high def compared to the cassette version, which is the analog version. Okay, so although the CD sounds great and clear, it is often missing the effects of analog artifacts such as hiss, warmth, depth, saturation, overall warmth. Still, CDs were a big hit and they sound great, you know, especially if you coming from a master, you know, you coming from a analog recording and then you transferring it to digital, you know. But nowadays, or how it became later on, it was everything was recorded digitally, everything was sent over digitally, mastered digitally, and then transferred over to the CDs digitally, not really going through an analog process. So still, CDs were a big hit and they sound great. So tape and vinyl still sounds better because they were analog. And to make a long story short, you know, basically that's what I'm saying. So digital media is more popular today because of the ease of distribution. So we'll talk about that later. Some of the projects I'm working on is going to be physical copies, and I'll tell you how I'm doing that and how some of the artists I'm dealing with are going that route versus the streaming route. First of all, you got to understand what the audio interface is. So audio interface is responsible for converting analog signals to digital and digital signals back to analog. Okay, back out of your analog is your output. Okay. These are mathematical algorithms in the digital world that takes electrical analog signals and convert them to digital. Okay, so the quality of your converters depends on how well it does this. So the higher the quality of the converters, the better it translates analog to digital and vice versa. So good converters, you know, good decent converters. So it's like a high quality camera, right? the higher the quality of your camera, the better picture it takes. Okay, so the higher quality of the analog of the actual converters, the higher the quality is, the better it captures the analog, and the better it converts it to digital, and back, vice versa. So let's address this. The converters in the Live 3 are just as good as any medium budget audio interface, which most music is recorded on these days. So the sound is not going to be like a high-end analog, one of the UAD Apollo interfaces, RME, I can go on and on. The higher interfaces that can cost you, a couple of $1,000 or $3,000-$4,000, but it would be on par with most modern music today, because most people are recording things at their home, and a lot of independent releases are being released from home studios that do not have the super high quality audio interfaces. So this is my personal opinion. Music don't sound as good as it used to. I'm just gonna be straight up and be honest. And I probably started noticing these differences once we start getting into the computer world with the music and everything. Because when I first started recording, I was witnessing recording. It was reel-to-reel tape machines. Old gospel group back in Huntsville, Rocket City Harmonizers. I was over there. I was 4 or 5 years old watching Gus and them recording. They had this big giant reel-to-reel tape that was going on, and when I listen to those recordings compared to some of the digital stuff, of course you lose that. You lose that warmth and everything. And so I would say that I'll put, a lot of the sound differences I put it on computers. All right, home studios, the lack of engineering know-how, and just a plain acceptance of tolerating almost anything these days. So sadly, sound advantage like analog production in recordings of the past has become less of a priority and concern for the music industry overall. So the MPC Live 3 is not going to sound like the MPC 3000. It's not going to sound like the SP 1200. Okay, it's not going to sound like an old TR 808 or anything like that. All right, so being an MPC, it is going to hit in its own way. It's still going to hit and give you that, it's going to give you that thing that MPCs do. So, and from my experience, it sounds better when you actually sample the sounds into it versus just loading a bunch of pre-ready samples. You want to, whatever it does on the MPC, whether it's compressing it, whatever it does. I sampled a whole bunch of drums out of the Triton LE back in the day into my 2000 XL. And those drums sound totally different from when I just play them directly back from the Triton. So, and actually it was the Triton LE. When I play those drums, after I sample and play them back from the MPC, they hit harder, they're punchier. They sound sharper, they sound crispier. All right. So this will work the same way on the Live 3. So that's one way to maybe get a better sound. Like sample your music, but keep this in mind. And let me just go here. So the Live 3 and other new generation MPCs, they play back what you put in them. So stock sounds okay, but they might need some tweaking, So from my experience, it's better to sample your sounds versus importing the sounds from anywhere. Sampling adds the MPC magic that make drums hit harder. So the converters in the Live 3 won't add any color unless you incorporate other gear. So you have to run it through something, I know when Bolo makes his sample packs, he's running it through the analog gear to get that analog sheen. So when you put his samples inside your MPC or whatever, even in your software, they got a little extra hit. Same thing with EA Ski's. So I got one of his. I'm gonna get the rest of them. And with that being said, the converters in the Live 3, in my opinion, and after 30 years of working on MPCs and recording with tape and tons of audio interfaces and converters, they are about average for today's music. Straight out the box. They just sound like what's on the radio. They sound, it sounds like regular today stuff, Not saying today's music sounds bad, or when I say the music, I don't mean the actual music itself. I mean the quality of the recordings, the sonics of the music. You know, it sounds like music for today. That's what the new generation MPCs sound like. So it's really not a bad thing. They sound like a computer, you know. And I will say this: so if you want to stand out sound wise for genres like classic sound and hip hop, from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you know, you need to become basically an engineer, and more than likely run a unit through really good audio, run it through a really good audio chain to add that analog sheen to your sound. So this can be as simple as running through a mid-level mixer, you know, something like one of the old Mackie boards, up to a high-end signal chain, a 500 series component. So, you know, the old Mackie board or one of the old Yamaha boards. I like those old boards. You know, they're not clean. They might have a little hiss or something going on with them. They get hot, you know. They'll add some analog warmth to your signal coming from the MPC Live, the new generation joints. So consider the cost to set this up. And also, if you have to pay someone, because most people doing this, they don't know how to set this stuff up. So you have to pay somebody. You might call somebody like me, all right, or another engineer, somebody who's been doing this for a while, who knows how to set up Series 500 components. You know, get your little box, put your components in there. Most people just start off with a left and right stereo situation, then go out into their interface. But you're doing something to run the sound through. So you may even have to invest in another audio interface to handle your conversion for the Live 3. Because you can plug up another audio interface, and what that audio interface does, it takes over the actual sound or the conversion of your audio. Okay, so that could improve your sound. But keep in mind with this now, you're already $1,800 in the hole after taxes already. All right. So these are some things to consider when talking about converters, aka the sound. All right. So that was reason number 4 why you should not buy the MPC Live 3. Okay. Now this, if you want that sound, that, you know, that old school sound, that big warm situation like a 3000 or something like that, you're gonna have to buy external gear to get that sound. Do these MPCs sound bad? No, they sound like today's music. It sound like, you know, somebody making a beat in FL Studio. It sound like somebody making a beat in Logic. It sounds like the computer. I run my MPC, I run it out into some kind of analog processing chain. You know, I don't use the export. It has to touch some kind of analog circuitry. All right. If you're a good mix engineer, you can work and get it to sound a certain way. Okay. But just out the box, you're going to sound like everything else, you know, unless you are putting your stuff up against somebody using the MPC 3000. You know, the MPC 3000 is warm and thick, and it's also clear too. It's crispy. All right. That thing, like the converters on there, that might be the best MPC. I also love the 4000 as well. But setting up the right, you know, audio chain, you can do some things with your new generation MPC. So reason number 5 why you should not buy the MPC Live 3. This is a little bit of it's a little bit controversial. You know, you got the MPC Pro Pack. If you already own the new gen MPC when they came out of 2017 and afterwards, you can get most of the function of the Live 3. Okay, so you're missing the functions, but you'll be missing the functions of the MPC E-pads. Otherwise, it's the same basic workflow. So in short, you need to pay $99 for the Pro Pack, which adds a lot of the features of the Live 3. Okay, so you can get the clip launch feature, the visual EQ, the Pro Reverb, and a couple other goodies. So now for the Pro Stems, they fixed the Pro Stems on the MPC Live 3. You got the more powerful CPU, you know, the 8-core with the, you know, with all the 8 gigs of RAM. So it works fast. It from what I've been seeing, it you know, it does the stem just as good as the desktop computer. So the Pro stems is not going to work on one of the previous MPCs. So, but you can use the workaround is to use the desktop software to process your stems and import. You know, you can import those back into the standalone machine, and there you go. You know, just one little extra step. You will need to use, you know, resource management because you do not have the upgraded RAM and CPU. So I personally haven't had any issues running out of RAM. You know, I bought the MPC X back in 2017. The first day that it dropped, I got it from Zion's back in the day. All right, when I got it, I never ran out of space or anything like that. So, has anybody ran out of space or power, CPU power? It's hard to run out of CPU power, you know, on those. But with all the new plugins, with all the new processing, all these new tricks and everything, that's when you can actually run up against that. You know, running the newest software on the previous version of the MPC. So again, resource management is a skill set within itself. So with the Pro Pack, you can spend $100 instead of $1,800 if you already own one of the new MPCs, or you wasn't using it before. So do you really need it now? So those are my 5 reasons why you should not get the MPC Live 3. So in my next video, I'm going to talk about why you should get the MPC Live 3. Do y'all think I have an MPC Live 3? When do y'all think I got it, if I have it? My idea is to hold out for the flagship. Like, I need the full joint with all the IO. I do appreciate all the buttons on the Live 3 and everything. I like the layout of the X. It reminds me of a classic MPC, like the 3000, especially the XE with that cream color. Just reminds me of that. So my thing is that I would prefer to have the flagship model, and who knows, they may do something with the converters. I don't know. You know, that would be great, but I'll just continue to use it how I use it, track it through my analog hardware gear and get that sound, you know. But yeah, those are my 5 reasons, and we will talk on the next video. And go ahead and feel free to comment. If you did get the MPC Live 3, go ahead and tell me why. And if you're not getting it, go ahead and tell me why. Peace out.